Joe and his dream of owning a home. Anyone know Joe? Joe comes in many shapes and sizes. Joe, the married guy. Joe, the young out-of-school guy. Joe, the new dad guy. Joe, the single guy. Joe, who just got divorced guy. Joe, whose children just left the nest guy. Joe, the newlywed guy. Joe, who just got a new job in a different town guy. Joe, who wants to start collecting rent on an investment property guy, and all other kinds of Joe guy. In any case, you're probably a lot like our friend Joe. Most of us dream of owning our own home. Only there's a few matters and obstacles to navigate through in making our visions of grandeur and living the dream come true. But if we're smart and make good choices, there's no reason Joe cannot make his dreams come true. As Joe starts thinking about how he's going to forge ahead and capture the holy grail of homeownership, his research and study let him know there's a few dark side issues he must face and conquer before the true bliss of owning his own home. What's the voodoo to all this financing stuff? What's an LTV and a DTI? Why do these lenders want to know Joe's grandmother's middle name? Joe can't even remember that himself. And why does Homeland Security want to know how money got into Joe's savings account? What's a yield spread, and who's the appraiser gal Joe has to pay? And where did all these other fees come from? Who can let Joe know exactly how much he can afford to spend on a new home? There are also all these real estate signs around town, and who can Joe really trust with his confidential information? What firm and realtor is best, especially in these days where it seems almost everyone is a real estate agent? How do these realtors get their training? Who teaches them what to look for and how to keep Joe's personal information truly confidential? Are they discreet? Does Joe's realtor have Joe's best interests in mind, or is their payday more important? Who can Joe truly trust? What does Joe need to know about real estate? How does Joe know if the market for his type of home is trending up or down? Where should Joe look based on his lifestyle, goals, current situation, and dreams? Should Joe wait to look and offer on a new home because values are trending down? Or should Joe pull the trigger now because values are trending up and interest rates are as good as they may be for quite some time? Is a house that needs to be fixed up a bit going to be a better value? Or should Joe purchase something in a pristine condition? Are those sites like Zillow and Realtor.com good places to look and get information and advice? Or are they trying to sell Joe something he doesn't need? Does Joe need to go and take a real estate 101 class before launching into this? There's almost too much to process and think about, and Joe has only his passion for finding his dream home and ability to make good choices, like a true home buying crusader, to fall back on. Joe starts to feel a bit overwhelmed and maybe just needs a short break from all this neurotic business. Aha! A text from Joe's best buddy John shows up, and John wants to meet for a beer. Why not? It's Friday afternoon and Joe's wife Lisa is getting her hair done before they head out for dinner with some friends later. So Joe heads over to the gastropub to meet John and enjoy a local craft beer. As Joe wheels into the pub and sits next to John, he notices the logo on John's new fitted and very comfortable looking shirt. HBC, it says. Joe immediately asks John what HBC is, and John lets Joe know it stands for Home Buying Crusader. Wow, exclaims Joe. You're a home buying crusader as well? You wouldn't believe all the stuff I've gone through this week to see about buying a new home. John lets Joe know he and his wife Jane just went through a similar and daunting process while purchasing a new investment property. John tells Joe he can see why the process seems so daunting with all the potholes to maneuver around and over concerning loans, appraisals, lending rules, trusting the proper people and firms, and just the sheer amount of legwork. John lets Joe know the best way he and Jane found to make it through the minefield of potential missteps and come out with a great experience and happy travels to the finish line is to find a great, trustworthy, and local guide. John says he knows exactly how Joe feels, and he and Jane felt the same way until they found a firm and guide that helped them to take control of the process, was knowledgeable about all the variables they might encounter, and was both trustworthy and discreet regarding their personal information, and most of all, put John and Jane's interests ahead of everything else involved in the process. Whoa, exclaimed Joe. That's quite a bit to ask for in one firm and person. Where did you find such a great guide? John tells Joe he and Jane got a referral from their neighbor, Jean Marie. Jean Marie and her family had worked with one of the advisors down at the local Engel and Volker shop last year and were extremely happy with the quality of service as well as the personality and professionalism of their advisor. So Jane and John reached out to Engel and Volkers and found them to be highly professional and their advisors to be very authentic, knowledgeable, and discerning. John went on to let Joe know he and Jane made time for a few appointments to review their wants and needs with the advisor and started to feel very confident they could take on just about anything the daunting purchase process might throw at them. John said their advisor sat he and Jane down and reviewed the entire process with them, from initial loan qualification to how they wanted to set their search parameters for an investment property, what kind of returns they might expect based on loan variables, expected rents, cost of ownership fees, taxes, and other factors, to how they might want to consider taking care of the property and what's expected of a landlord and tenant, and everything else that went along with investment property ownership. At the end of the meetings with their advisor, John said he and Jane felt they had all the information they needed to make a good choice on moving forward with confidence, and they felt educated enough to make a good decision about buying a home. John also let Joe know that he and Jane felt as if the team at Engel and Volkers were authorities in the real estate brokerage industry and fit John and Jane's criteria of being both knowledgeable and trustworthy. John said he felt as if the Engel and Volkers people were great guides and helped he and Jane make great decisions, while not interfering with their volition and final decision-making process. The next day, Joe and Lisa called up John's Engel and Volkers advisor, Hermione, and made an appointment to sit down and get to know one another. Surprisingly to Joe and Lisa, Hermione took all the time to get to know them a bit and then asked more about their interests, goals, and what kind of house they were after. It was actually refreshing, and Joe and Lisa felt very comfortable by the end of the meeting. Hermione also let them know she did not need all the details regarding their personal financial situation, and in the end, she would just need to know what they qualified for, so she could use that in the parameters of her search. Joe and Lisa felt very empowered and well taken care of. Joe and Lisa got in touch with Hermione's referrals and in the end thought Hans would best suit their profile and be able to deliver a good and solid loan product. Once Joe knew what he and Lisa qualified for, the experience became even more empowering. Now they knew precisely what they were looking for, heading down the path of the true HBC. All the stuff and the bird's nest of variables was falling into place, one piece at a time. From John to Hermione to Hans, it really was a team effort by the guides, and Joe and Lisa could see the light at the end of the tunnel now. The other factor Joe really liked and that really helped empower Lisa, it's always nice to have Lisa on the same page, he was thinking, was the process of Hans sitting down with them to show them what they could afford and then talking with Hermione again and going over the benefits of ownership versus renting. And lo and behold, for Joe and Lisa, it was actually less expensive over time to own, and they got the benefit of tax assistance, depreciation, capital gains exemptions, and potential appreciation as well. Joe could really see the value in ownership and in being a new HBC. Also, he and Lisa were learning quite a bit and felt like their decisions were in their own hands. It was nice to not have to rely on someone else. After all the variables were in place, Joe and Lisa saw the timing was perfect to purchase their first new home. Joe got in touch with Hermione and let her know what Hans had told them and sent their qualifications letter from Hans over to Hermione. He and Lisa then made sure Hermione had all their ideal scene parameters down, along with their magic number of affordability. Hermione set up a couple of different searches for Joe and Lisa. Then they started to receive emails from Hermione with different potential homes. Joe and Lisa looked these over carefully and called Hermione up and asked her if they could see a half dozen or so. The next Saturday, they met with Hermione at her Engel and Volker shop downtown and then headed off to seek the Holy Grail and cement their HBC status. Hermione had done an excellent job of listening to them, and Joe was very impressed, and there were at least 3 of the homes Lisa liked quite a bit. And in the end, they weighed all the pros and cons of each location and house and made an offer to purchase one of the 3 Lisa liked. To Joe's pleasant surprise, Hermione made the process seamless and easy for them. Hermione took care of crafting the offer with input from Joe and Lisa, then asked them to write a letter to the seller talking about why they loved this property so much. Hermione went through everything on the offer with Joe and Lisa and gave them the overview of the next steps as well. Hermione was very professional and guided Joe and Lisa carefully and set realistic expectations of what the process might be like. By later that evening, Hermione had sent the offer over to the seller's agent and suggested Joe and Lisa go out for a nice dinner and relax with a movie. The next day, Hermione called and asked Joe and Lisa to come down to the shop as she had some good news for them. They met with Hermione a few hours later and went over the counteroffer the sellers had sent them, along with a nice correspondence letting Joe and Lisa know the sellers had enjoyed their letter. The counteroffer was within their range of acceptability, and the counteroffer really just tightened up some terms the seller requested, and ultimately Joe and Lisa accepted and signed the contract. Wow, this wasn't so tough as Joe thought it was going to be when he first embarked on his journey and before talking to John. Both Hermione at Engel & Volkers and Hans really knew their stuff, and they really kept Joe and Lisa empowered and communicated well. The next few weeks went by quickly and both Hermione and Hans kept in good touch. The loan approval did ask for some personal information, as Hans told them it would. Hermione was very patient and helped guide Joe and Lisa through the home inspection process, as well as the other timelines they needed to meet in order to stay within the parameters of the contract and not jeopardize their new home and investment. Once again, Joe and Lisa felt empowered and not overwhelmed, or as if Hermione was making the choices for them. What a great ride this was turning out to be. Once closing day came to them, Joe and Lisa were nothing short of ecstatic. They had done it, gotten a loan, found a property, negotiated a win-win contract, met all of their responsibilities, and closed their new home on time. They got their new home keys from Hermione on closing day, and then when they got out and saw the red bow on their door and the new HBC shirts on the counter, they knew they'd arrived. They were homeowners. The American dream really does come true.